people. So we are going to look today at day 4, slides 22 to 25. Before we get into that, I'm so excited to announce that tomorrow we'll have our first Zoom party so that we can all see each other. I know you, like so many of you in both classes, have been saying hi to each other on EDSB. So it'll just be a way for us to connect again as a little class family and see each other's faces. We'll play some games, and tomorrow Zoom will take the place of a YouTube video. So no YouTube video tomorrow, and also no YouTube video on Monday because Monday is a non-student day. Use those days to catch up on any work that you've missed throughout your packet. Try and get your downloading done. And let's just go ahead and jump into the slides. I'm so excited for tomorrow. So we're still doing that same standard of integrating information. Remember, that's a big one as you move into middle school, high school, college. You'll be looking at multiple, 3 or more texts. And that's what you're looking at today. Yesterday we looked at 2. Today we'll look at 3 mini texts. And you guys also do that all the time when you've had your writing packets as well. So 3 sources so that we can look at related information to synthesize and integrate in order to talk knowledgeably about a certain topic. Looking at our 3 texts from on slides 22 to 25, I want you to be thinking, what is the common topic? Okay, so while you're thinking about that, we are going to quickly talk about our first little mini game, our first little challenge. I want you to think, and I want you to also write on EDSB, take a good look. These 2 little dudes, that's the same person. This is obviously oh my gosh, I just said person. This is the same dog, and this is a different dog. Who is the human, the woof woof human of this doggy? Go ahead and make sure that you write that and answer me in an EDSB message. That's your first little challenge. And this is the slide that you should be on at this time. It should look like this. So just looking at these topics or these titles, what is the common topic? Satellite, communication satellites, and how satellites track cell phones. You should be able right away to tell me that the common little thread here is satellites. So let's go ahead and jump in. Remember, I'm doing this so that in case you needed some help reading the text, you can get a little bit of support that way. All right, so our first text is Satellite by Roger Spando. It says, a satellite is a small body or object that revolves around a larger object in space. The moon is Earth's satellite, and all the planets are satellites of the sun. Moon and planets are called natural satellites. Let's go ahead and really quickly just write down the little main idea on the side here. I want you to think back before I even do that to yesterday, okay? We looked at, when we're looking at the same topic with multiple texts, you should be asking yourselves those kind of main questions. Who are we talking about? What did they do? Why was it important? Okay? And even though we don't talk about a who in these 3 texts, I want you to think about what is it about satellites that's important? How is it used? Why did we need it? Keep those questions in the back of your mind, okay? So this first one just talked about what? Let me use a darker pen right here for us. Quick phrases, right? Doesn't have to be perfect English. What is... I'm going to put S for satellite. Text 1 right there. Artificial satellites are human-made objects that revolve around larger natural satellites. The first artificial satellite was Sputnik 1. Sputnik 1, it's a cool name. A 185-pound capsule sent into orbit by the Soviet Union in 1957. Since that time, many satellites have been sent into space. I'm going to underline just this little chunk right here. I'll probably underline this chunk right here and put a little star. That tells me that that's important. It says, today, should have a comma there are hundreds of satellites circling Earth. I'm going to underline circling Earth. They used for research, weather, study, navigation, and communication. I'm actually going to highlight this for us. It tells me an important piece of information right here, what they're used for. Remember, I said that was one of the questions to keep in the back of your mind, right? Among these is the largest, the International Space Station, where astronauts work and research in space. Okay? All right. What did this little chunk mostly tell me about? Remember, I'm using the symbol S, circle for satellite. So I'm just really quickly going to write down how satellites use, how they use, right? Okay, let's jump on to text number 2. Let's label that really quickly, source number 2. And remember, I'm labeling my sources just like we did whenever we would do writing, because when I get to these TBQs and they're asking me about all these different sources, they might ask me passage 1 and passage 2, passage 1 and passage 3, or they might give me the names. And I want us to make sure that we do not get confused when we are working with multiple texts. This is just a way for us to organize ourselves, right? Let's continue coding. Communication Satellites by Dirk Costa. Let's go ahead and look at the word communication. This one was just called satellite. Communication satellites. What do we think about when we think of communication? I think about a word that we studied a few days back when we talked about, let's see, analyzing relationships and interactions. I think about the word interaction when I think of communication, right? It takes some listening, it takes some speaking, it takes some receiving, it takes some giving, right? When it comes to communication. All right, how do communication satellites work? This tells me already. This is probably going to be the main idea, which goes back to that question we asked ourselves yesterday when we filled out this graphic organizer. What's the purpose of it? How does it work? Why do we need it? Why is it needed, and by whom? A cell phone, I'm not going to put a note right there. A cell phone uses cell towers to send and receive signals. However, in rural areas, that's areas where it's not like a city area or an urban area, okay? Like Mort and the community of Mort is an urban area. When you think rural, I want you to think some of those areas in Plant City and Riverview where you can drive by and you'll see a lot of beautiful pastures with cows and other animals, and there are not that many people or developments like malls and city life in those areas, okay? However, in rural areas and over the oceans, it is not possible to erect cell phone towers, okay? So it's not possible to build up and keep a standing cell phone tower. The solution is simple. So the fact that it has the word solution tells me what's the opposite of solution again when it comes to text structure. That tell me a little problem up here, right? It's not possible to always have a standing cell phone tower in some of these rural areas. The solution is use a satellite phone which can cover vast, wide, and long distances. Okay, I'm going to underline satellite phone, cover vast distances. So in this quick little, for this quick little main idea or blurb, I'll write down satellite phone. And the key word here for me is distance. Okay, let's look at the next one. So how does it work? Ooh, it's going to tell me how it works here. A satellite phone sends a signal up to a satellite. This is all reminding me of walkie-talkies when Miss Brown, Miss Snellgrove, our secret favorite, sorry y'all, and Mr. Reyes, when they're walking around and walkie-talkieing each other. I'm just kidding, we love you all, but you know Snelly's always visiting us and giving us love. Think about that, okay? They're giving and receiving little signals. The walkie-talkies are not connected by a wire to each other like what we read about yesterday, right, with telegraphs. Instead, there's a signal that needs to be sent. A satellite phone sends a signal up, telling me how it works, to a satellite. And the signal is then sent down to a ground station where we live, right? This station sends the call to the cell phone or landline. You guys are not accustomed to landlines that much, okay? Most of you have cell phones and your family have cell phone your family members have cell phones. When you think of a landline, think about those little phones that are connected. I know this is kind of a hot mess, but you'll know I'm trying. They're connected like to those phones in the front office, right? That Miss Sandra and Miss Shayla use to call your parents when you're feeling sick or when you need to go home, okay? The phone inside our classrooms look like a landline, but they're not because we can't call out to an outside phone number. It's just from one class to the next. But the ones in the office, those are examples of landlines, okay? So again, this station sends a call to the cell phone or landline. If someone wants to call a satellite phone, the reverse works too. The call from the landline or cell phone first goes to the ground station, then it travels up to the satellite, and then down to the satellite phone. Okay, so this is just telling me how these are used and how they work. Okay. And I would say that the key word here is about the signals that are being sent and transmitted. Remember that word that we learned yesterday was transmit. All right, so we're going through these kind of quickly because I want us to spend more of our time with the TBQs on the other side, okay? All right. How satellites, again, that topic word for text free, make sure you have a little 3 somewhere, track cell phones. And if you're just using paper and pencil, guys, all you have to do is write down something like this, okay, on your paper. Text 1, and then you're labeling paragraph 1, and you write down our little note right here. Paragraph 2, our little note right here. Text 2, right? Paragraph 1, 2, we didn't have anything. Paragraph 2, you'd write down satellite phone and distance. Paragraph 3, just like this, keep it simple. How used and signals, just like that, okay? Just in case you're using a piece of paper. Cool beans. How Satellites Track Cell Phones by Jane Wu. Woo, cool name. No, shouldn't have done that. Sorry. I love you, Jane Wu. Paragraph 1. You might have seen television shows where the police located a missing person by locating his or her cell phone. Okay? Go ahead and picture that right now. When an author does this, he or she, in this case, wants you to imagine that and think about a time that you've done that and that's happened. Okay? Communication satellites. Ooh, we're talking about communication satellites again, just like we did here, and just like they mentioned over here. Seeing a little bit of a trend right now. Communication satellites make this possible if the phone, okay, to make something possible means that they're allowing something to work. If the phone has a global positioning system or GPS. When I think of a GPS, I think of something that involves locating something else. We turn on our GPSs on our phone, like the Maps app, when we want to go to a place that we're unfamiliar with. Okay, so communication satellites make this possible if the phone has a GPS chip inside the phone, which most phones do. Okay, so again, I'm seeing this word communication, and that's the whole point of the GPS chip. It allows us to interact or to locate something else. All right, so I'm going to put down on the side, and I'm just using this side instead of this one like that text. Okay, I'm going to write down use of communication satellites. Okay, I'm putting comp for communication. Paragraph 2, some 22,000 miles high above us, the United States operates 24 communication satellites that orbit Earth. The satellites circle Earth, tell me what it does, every 12 hours. They are positioned so that 5 satellites can be seen from any point on Earth at any time of the day. I'm going to underline seen from any point on Earth because that goes back to the point of locating. So you know what? I'm going to put down location. Okay? That seems to be a keyword there that I'm seeing. For this paragraph, I'm going to put a little arrow going up since it's the same idea. And it's telling me a little bit about how these communication satellites work. Okay? These satellites transmit radio signals down to Earth. Each satellite measures the time it takes for a signal from a chip to read the satellite. Less than 1/10 of a second. It's telling us how fast we get those signals. Then it multiplies the time by how fast a radio wave moves. Some 186,000 miles or 300,000 kilometers a second. The result is the distance between the GPS chip and the satellite. Okay. Okie dokes. I'm just going to stick with a little bit of that. It's still telling me and relating back to this paragraph. But as soon as I eyeball this next paragraph, I'm seeing information about the GPS again. To determine an accurate location of a cell phone, I'm going to underline accurate location. It's going to tell me how to determine that. The GPS must use at least 3 satellites. 4 satellites make the data even more accurate. If all this sounds unbelievable, imagine this. GPS can pinpoint a location within 35 feet. Okay. This is still telling me about GPS being able to locate or pinpoint locations. Okay, so I kept my blurbs kind of simple and short, right? I have my information right here, just like you might have your quick little notes on your text. Let's get right into the questions so that we can finish this up in just a few minutes. All right. So this question has I promise I'm not sick. This question, I just drank my coffee way too fast. This question has 2 parts. No regrets. Answer part A, then answer part B. I know that part A asks us about an idea or a concept. Part B is always asking me about text evidence. Part A, which idea is in both communication satellites and how satellites track cell phones? Which 2 texts are those, y'all? Okay, text 2 and text 3. I'm going to write that down. 2 and 3. Okay, look back at my little notes. What was this mostly about? Okay, so it tells me about my 2 little notes right here. Signals, satellite phone and distance. Okay, what's this next one about? How they track cell phones and how they locate those cell phones, right? Using a GPS. That was that big idea right here, based on my notes. So which ideas in both of these texts? They both had to do with communication devices. One of them had more specifically to do with locating a cell phone. Let's see. Satellites orbit the Earth every 12 hours. That's a detail, but it's not an idea in both texts. In rural areas, okay, that's like the opposite of a city area, it's not always possible to build cell towers. I remember seeing that piece of information, right? But I don't think that that was such a huge idea, okay? All right. Some cell phones have a global positioning system, a GPS. I feel like that was just in text number 3, okay? Phones, they both talked about phones, can use satellites, both talked about this, to send and receive data, okay? I'm Go ahead and choose this one. Whoa, that was supposed to be a star. That's a mess. Part B. Remember, part B is always about evidence. Choose one sentence from text number 2 and one sentence from text number 3 that support the answer to part A. Sorry about the blurriness, babies. Let me fix this. Write each sentence in the appropriate supporting detail box below. This is all about just following directions. It's like online on, what do you call that? On iReady, when you guys have to drag and drop information. So go ahead and pause me before I show you my example and look in text 2 and 3 to get a detail, a supporting detail that supports this idea. Phones can use satellites to send and receive data. Pause me. And voila, this is my first piece of information from paragraph 3 in text number 2. A satellite phone sends a signal up to a satellite and the signal is then sent down to a ground station. That was in paragraph 3 and it relates right back to how phones can use satellites to send and receive data. Okay. From text number 3, I chose this piece of information to best support the idea that phones can use satellites to send and receive data or information. To determine an accurate location of a cell phone, the GPS must use at least 3 satellites because they're using that to send and receive data about the location of the phone. All right, cool beans. You can have a different piece of evidence, but make sure that it just supports this. This is not the only piece of evidence for text 2 and text 3. So you might be right if you choose something different. Based on information found in both satellites, text 1, and communication satellites, that's text number 2, which idea is true? Let's zoom in a little bit right here. That's clearer. Gosh, this is like using an Elmo. The first satellite was put in orbit around Earth in 1957. Okay. Is that an idea or is that just a detail? That's fluff. That's a detail. A cell phone relies on cell towers. Is that found in both of these texts? Now I'm just going to read these next 3 and then you pause me and choose your answer. There are special satellites that are used for communication. Satellite phones allow communication over long distances. Pause me. Okay. I'm going to underline first satellite. That was just a supporting detail. A cell phone relies on cell towers. That was just mentioned in one of the texts. That was also a similar trick to right here, right? And this information about rural cell towers. Okay. There are special satellites that are used for communication. Satellites, communication. That was a common theme in both texts. I'm going to put this. Satellite phones allow communication over long distances. So it's one of these. Make sure you have it right. In case you chose A and B, that's way off. Go ahead and narrow down to C and D in case you were wrong at first. And you should have chosen C. Cool beans. There's special satellites that are used for communication. Let's take a glance back. Ooh, communication satellites. How do they work? That's what this whole main idea is about. And then again, communication satellites oh gosh, I'm so sorry, babies. Communication satellites make locating a cell phone possible if the phone has a GPS chip inside. Okay, so satellites are used for communication. Cool. Now, look at number 3. Satellites help us to communicate with each other. Okay, they're giving us information right here. I'm going to actually highlight this. I would say that this is an idea, not just a detail. Choose one detail, supporting detail from satellite. Which text is that? Text 1. And one detail from how satellites track cell phones. Ooh, that's text number 3. That best supports this idea. So we want a supporting detail from text 1, a supporting detail from text 3 that supports this idea. Satellites help us to communicate with each other. Tell yourself another way to say this. I'm going to read it again. Satellites help us to communicate or interact, right, with one another. Visualize it, make a little movie, a quick little clip inside your mind of you communicating with somebody else. I want you to think to yourself, now that's possible when you communicate over a phone. That's possible because of satellites. Now, look at what the author, look at what the test maker does, right? We've practiced this in class. This is from, I'm going to color code a little bit. This is from text number 1, text number 1, text number 1. This is from, look at text number 3, okay? This is from text number 3, text number 3, text number 3. Okay, so that means that you cannot use 2 of these and you cannot use 2 of these. Okay, always remember that, guys. Which means that, just like we've done in class, remember when we did this? Put a line down the middle. Okay, now I'm choosing one of these and one of these to support this idea. Okay. A, object that revolves around a larger object. Ooh, they're giving us phrases. Used for research, weather, study, navigation, and communication. Astronauts work and research in space. Ooh, I'm seeing information both in B and C about research. Go ahead and code these up. We're going to act like these are 2 different questions, okay? Code up A, B, and C with your X's or your swirls. Okay. Object that revolves, used for research, work and research in space. Which one from text 1 tells you how they help communicate with each other? Keyword, communicate. Object that revolves around a larger object, used for research, weather, study, navigation, and communication. Astronauts work and research in space. I know when you think to yourself, ooh, they work together, that's a way of communicating, but them working with each other, they don't need a satellite to work with each other. This is a topic that they're researching. So this is B for this answer. That was a little bit of a trick. This one was supposed to throw you off. Okay, now let's look at this. D, E, and F. Remember we said we're going to treat this like another question, a separate question, but I still want you to look up here. Okay, satellites help us to communicate with each other. Which one of these is a detail that supports that idea? D, satellites transmit radio signals down to Earth less than 1/10 of a second. GPS can pinpoint a location within 35 feet. First of all, you should be checking to make sure that these are from this text. Okay, next. Go ahead and code these 3 up. If you need to pause me, and then start your Xing and your swirls. Okay, satellites transmit radio signals down to Earth. Is that how we is this directly telling me about us communicating with each other? Less than 1/10 of a second. That would probably be the most ridiculous one, the most incorrect one. And GPS can pinpoint a location within 35 feet. This one is just talking about, remember this one was about tracking a location, right? This one was supposed to throw you off a little bit. The answer would be this. Satellites transmit radio signals down to Earth. Why are they transmitting the radio signals down to Earth again? What was the whole point of that? So that you can, let's see, this was, I believe, in paragraph 3. These satellites transmit radio signals down to Earth. Each satellite measures the time it takes for a signal from a chip to reach the satellite. Then it multiplies by the time by how fast the radio wave moves, okay? So that one is the one that allows the communication. Even that DSV right there, transmit, would have been your keyword. Okay, babies. I hope you have a wonderful time, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow over Zoom. Goodbye, babes.